The Great Hall of Nexus Prime Academy stretched out like a metal canyon. 300 alien cadets stood in perfect rows, their different shapes and sizes making the floor look like a living rainbow. Some had forearms, others had no arms at all. Some breathed through gills, others through tiny holes in their skin. But they all had one thing in common. They were scared. Hana Kim stood in the back row. She was small compared to most of the others. Her black hair was tied back tight, and her dark eyes watched everything without showing what she was thinking. The other cadets around her whispered in their own languages, but Hana stayed quiet. At the front of the hall, Admiral Vextar walked onto the stage. He was tall and made of what looked like living crystal. When light hit him, colors danced across the walls. His forearms moved as he talked, and his voice sounded like wind through caves. "Cadets," the Admiral said, and the hall became silent. "Today you face your final test. For 2 years you have learned to fight in space. You have learned to use weapons and fly ships. You have learned to work with aliens from other worlds. But now comes the real test." A huge screen dropped down behind him. On it was a picture of a blue and green planet. It looked beautiful from space, with white clouds swirling around it. But Hana saw how the other cadets moved back when they saw it. Even Boric, who was made of living rock and feared nothing, made a low sound of worry. "This is Earth," Admiral Vextar continued. "What your people call a death world. The most dangerous planet we know of." The whispers started again, louder this time. Hana heard words in different languages, all of them meaning the same thing: fear, death, impossible. "Earth has gravity that will crush your bones," the Admiral said. "The air changes from poison to acid depending on where you are. The weather can kill you in minutes. The animals hunt in packs and show no mercy. The plants can eat you alive. And the bacteria," he paused. "The bacteria on Earth has killed more aliens than all our wars combined." Zyla, who was made of living gas, started to shake. Her blue form became harder to see as fear made her lose control. Next to her, Nex wrapped his tentacles around himself like he was trying to hide. "No cadet has ever survived 30 days on Earth," Admiral Vextar said. "Not one. We have sent the strongest, the smartest, the most prepared. They all died. Some lasted 1 day. The record is 12 days set by a cadet from the Iron Hills of Kradax." Hana remembered that cadet. His name was Thorak, and he was twice as big as any human. He could lift a small ship with his bare hands. If he only lasted 12 days, what chance did anyone else have? "Perhaps," the Admiral said, his crystal face showing no feeling. "It is time to admit that Earth cannot be beaten. Perhaps no cadet could survive such a place. Perhaps we should remove it from our tests." In the silence that followed, Hana could hear hearts beating, air moving through different kinds of lungs, and the small sounds that scared beings make. She could also hear something else: opportunity. Instructor Kale stepped forward from the side of the stage. He was from the bird planet Ariel, with white and brown feathers covering his body and sharp yellow eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes found Hana in the crowd and stayed on her for a moment. "However," Kyle said, his voice high and clear, "the test remains open. Any cadet who wishes to try may volunteer. The rules are simple. Survive on Earth for 30 days. Use only what you can carry. No help from outside. No rescue unless you are dying. And if we die anyway," Asterix from the front row. His shell-covered body made a clicking sound as he talked. "Then you die with honor," Admiral Vextar answered. "Your families will be told you died in service to the galaxy. Your names will be written in the Book of Heroes," more whispers. Hana heard the words the other cadets were not saying out loud. Stupid, pointless suicide. But she also heard something else. She heard the Admiral's words again. No cadet could survive such a place. Hana had heard those words before. She had heard them about other things, other places, other tests. And she had learned that when someone said something was impossible, they usually meant it was impossible for them. "I volunteer," she said. Her voice was not loud, but in the quiet hall, everyone heard it. 300 heads turned to look at her. 300 different kinds of eyes stared at the small human who had just volunteered to die. "Did someone speak?" Admiral Vextar asked, looking over the crowd. "Here, sir," Hana said, raising her hand. "Cadet Hana Kim. I volunteer for the Earth trial." The Admiral's crystal face turned toward her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, "Cadet Kim, do you understand what you are volunteering for?" "Yes, sir." "Do you understand that you will almost certainly die?" "I understand the risks, sir." Admiral Vextar was quiet for another moment. Very well. Anyone else? The silence stretched out. Hana could feel the other cadets staring at her, but she kept her eyes on the Admiral. She knew that some of them were thinking about it. Boric was brave, and he hated to be shown up by anyone smaller than him. Zyla was proud of her people's explorer history. Nex was always trying to prove himself. I volunteer, Boric said, his voice like grinding stone. And I, said Zyla, her gas form becoming more solid with determination. One by one, 11 more cadets volunteered, some because they were brave, some because they were proud, some because they could not let others think they were cowards. In the end, 12 cadets stood ready to face Earth. Very well, Admiral Vextar said. You have 3 days to prepare. Study Earth, learn what you can, write letters to your families, make peace with your gods. On the 4th day, you will be taken to Earth and dropped on its surface. The trial will begin. As the assembly ended and the other cadets filed out, Instructor Kale approached Hana. His bird-like head tilted as he looked at her. Why? He asked simply. Hana thought about the question. She could tell him about her scores in survival class, which were good but not the best. She could tell him about her physical fitness, which was average for humans but above average for the Academy. She could tell him about her study of Earth's environment, which she had been doing since she arrived at the Academy. Instead, she told him the truth. Because I want to see home again. Kale's yellow eyes blinked once. Home? But Hana was already walking away, leaving the instructor to wonder what she meant. As she left the Great Hall, she passed groups of cadets talking in worried voices about the volunteers, about Earth, about death and honor and courage. None of them were talking about the one thing that mattered most. None of them had asked the most important question. Why would the Academy put a planet in their trials that no one could survive? Hana smiled to herself as she walked back to her room. In 3 days, they would all find out. The transport ship Endeavour shook as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Hana sat strapped into her seat, watching the other 11 volunteers through the small windows. Most of them looked sick. The ship's artificial gravity was different from Earth's real gravity, and their bodies were already starting to feel the change. Boric's rock-like skin had turned a darker color, which meant he was stressed. Zyla's gas form kept shifting between solid and vapor, a sure sign of fear. Nex had wrapped all 6 of his tentacles around his seat and was making a low humming sound that his people made when they expected to die. Through the window, Hana could see Earth getting bigger and bigger. Green forests stretched out as far as she could see. Rivers wound through the land like silver snakes. Mountains rose up into clouds. It looked beautiful and peaceful. It looked like home. Landing zone confirmed, announced the ship's pilot, a mechanical being called Unit 47. Amazon Basin, South America. Weather conditions, heavy rain, high humidity. Temperature 32 degrees Celsius. Wind speed 15 meters per second. Lightning activity high. Thane, whose blue skin was designed for underwater living, made a choking sound. 32 degrees. That will cook my organs. The humidity is 90%, added Quinn, whose insect-like body needed dry air to function. I cannot survive in such moisture. Captain Yara, who was leading the mission, looked at each volunteer. She was from the desert world Sandak, and her yellow skin was already showing heat stress just from being inside the ship. Last chance to change your minds, she said. Once you are on the surface, we cannot help you. 30 days. Survive or die. Those are the only options. None of the volunteers moved. Pride, Hana thought. They would rather die than look weak in front of the others. The ship landed with a heavy thud that shook everyone's bones. The back door opened with a hiss and hot, wet air poured in. The smell hit them first. Rich earth, growing plants, rain, and life. So much life that it was almost overwhelming. Go, Captain Yara said. Your trial begins now. One by one, the cadets walked out of the ship. Hana went last, taking her time to look around. They were in a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. The trees were so big and so many that they blocked out most of the sky. Rain fell steadily, making everything wet and slippery. The air was thick and hard to breathe if you were not used to it. The ship lifted off immediately, leaving the 12 cadets alone in the wilderness. For a moment, nobody moved. They just stood in the rain, looking around at the green world that was supposed to kill them. Then the reality of their situation hit them. Thane collapsed first. The heat and humidity were too much for his water-adapted body. His gills, which were designed to filter water, could not handle the thick air. He fell to his knees, gasping like a fish out of water. "Help him," Zyla shouted. But when she tried to move toward Thane, the heavy air made her gas form compress. She became more solid than she had ever been, and the feeling scared her. Quinn tried to help, but the moisture in the air was getting into his breathing holes. His insect body was not designed for this much water. He started making clicking sounds of distress. Within the first hour, 3 cadets were in serious trouble. The others tried to help, but they had their own problems. Drix's shell was designed for the dry mountains of his homeworld. In the humid jungle, it started to soften and crack. Nex's tentacles kept slipping on the wet ground, and he could not get a good grip on anything. Only Boric seemed somewhat comfortable. His rock body was hard enough to handle the conditions, though even he moved slowly in the heavy gravity. And Hana looked around the jungle like she was taking a walk in a park. She moved through the trees without making noise. She found shelter under a large rock overhang. She started a fire using dry wood she found in a hollow tree. She collected rainwater in large leaves and showed the others how to clean it. "How do you know these things?" Boric asked, watching Hana work. "Basic survival," Hana said, not really answering the question. By the second day, Thane was dead. His body could not process the thick air, and his gills stopped working. They buried him under some rocks, and Captain Yara's voice came from a small communicator to confirm the death. By the third day, Quinn was gone too. The moisture had gotten into his breathing system and caused an infection that his people had no defense against. 2 volunteers dead in 3 days. The others were getting desperate. Zyla could barely keep her form together. Drix's shell continued to soften, leaving him vulnerable. Nex was covered in small cuts from trying to move through the sharp plants, but Hana seemed to be getting stronger. She knew which plants were safe to eat and which ones would kill you. She knew how to build traps for small animals. She knew how to find dry ground in a place where everything was wet. She knew how to sleep in a way that kept the bugs from biting. On the 4th day, they heard a sound that froze everyone's blood, a low roar that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It was followed by the sound of something large moving through the trees. "What was that?" Zyla whispered, her form becoming almost invisible with fear. Hana was quiet for a moment, listening. "Jaguar," she said calmly. "What is a jaguar?" Drix asked. "Big cat. Hunts alone. Very strong. Can bite through bone." The other cadets looked around wildly, trying to see the predator in the thick jungle, but Hana just continued preparing their dinner like nothing had happened. "Should we not run?" Nex asked, his tentacles wrapped tightly around a tree branch. "No," Hana said. "Running makes you prey." The jaguar appeared at the edge of their camp just as the sun was setting. It was a beautiful animal, with golden fur covered in black spots, but its yellow eyes were the eyes of a killer, and its muscles moved under its fur like coiled springs. The alien cadets froze. In their minds, they were already dead. This was how it would end, eaten by a predator on a death world far from home and family. But Hana stood up slowly. She did not run. She did not scream. She made herself as big as possible, spreading her arms and standing tall. She looked the jaguar directly in the eyes. "Get back," she said in a loud, firm voice. "Go on, get." The jaguar stopped. It tilted its head, studying this strange small creature that was not acting like prey. For a long moment, predator and human stared at each other. Then Hana took a step forward. "I said get back." The jaguar, confused by this behavior, took a step backward. Then another. Then it turned and disappeared into the jungle. The alien cadet stared at Hana in shock. "How did you do that?" Boric asked. Hana sat back down and continued preparing their food. "You show them you are not afraid. Predators can smell fear. If you act like prey, they will treat you like prey. But how did you know what to do?" Hana looked up at him, and for just a moment Boric saw something in her eyes. Something that made him think that maybe, just maybe, this small human was more dangerous than any jaguar. "Lucky guess," she said. But as they ate their dinner and listened to the sounds of the jungle night, Boric could not shake the feeling that there had been nothing lucky about it at all. By the 15th day, only 4 cadets remained alive. The jungle had claimed 8 of their companions through heat, disease, predators, and simple exhaustion. Thane and Quinn had died first, followed by others whose names were now carved into a tree that served as their memorial. The survivors were Hana, Boric, Zyla, and Drix, but calling them all survivors was not really accurate. Boric was hanging on through pure stubbornness. his rock body slowly wearing down from the constant moisture. Xyla could barely maintain her gas form in the thick air, becoming more solid each day. Drix's shell had softened so much that he moved like an old man, careful not to crack what protection he had left. And then there was Hana, who moved through the death world like she belonged there. That morning she had woken them before dawn. "Storm coming," she said simply. The others looked up at the sky through the tree branches. It looked the same as always, gray clouds and occasional rain. But within an hour the wind began to pick up. By noon the trees were bending and creaking in ways that made everyone nervous. "How did you know?" Xyla asked, her voice barely holding together as the air pressure changed. "Smell," Hana said, leading them to a cave she had found the day before. "Air pressure." "The way the animals act." "What animals?" Drix asked, looking around. "I have not seen any animals today." "Exactly," Hana said. By afternoon, the storm hit with a fury that none of the aliens had ever experienced. Wind speeds that could knock down buildings, rain that fell like bullets, lightning that turned the sky white every few seconds, thunder that shook the ground under their feet. The 3 alien cadets huddled in the back of the cave, terror written on their faces. This was not weather. This was the planet trying to kill them. On their home worlds, storms like this would be considered natural disasters. Emergency shelters would open. Rescue teams would be ready. Entire cities would shut down. But Hana sat at the mouth of the cave, watching the storm like it was entertainment. "Are you insane?" Bork shouted over the wind. "Get away from there." "It is just weather," Hana said calmly. "Just weather?" Xyla's voice rose to a scream. "This storm could level a city." Hana turned to look at them, and in the lightning flashes they could see her face clearly. She was not scared. She was not worried. If anything, she looked comfortable. "Where I come from, we call this Tuesday," she said. The storm lasted 2 days. 2 days of wind and rain and lightning that would have killed them all if not for the cave Hana had found. When it finally passed, the jungle was transformed. Trees had fallen. New rivers had formed. The landscape itself had changed. The alien cadets stumbled out of the cave like survivors of a war. But Hana stepped out like someone returning from a vacation. "We need to find fresh water," she said, sniffing the air. "The storm will have contaminated the stream we were using." "How can you think about water at a time like this?" Drix asked, his softened shell making clicking sounds as he moved. "Because without water we die in 3 days," Hana said. "With bad water we die in 1 day." She led them through the changed jungle to a new water source, a clear pool fed by rainwater that had filtered through rocks. While the others drank gratefully, Boric watched Hana with growing confusion. "You are not like the other humans at the academy," he said. "What do you mean?" "The other humans struggle with things that are easy for us. They need special equipment to breathe in thin air. They cannot lift heavy objects. They get tired quickly." He paused. "But you are different here. This place that kills us makes you stronger." Hana was quiet for a moment. "Different places suit different people." "But this is not just any place," Xyla said, her form flickering in and out of solid. "This is a death world. Nothing should be able to live here." "Things do live here," Hana pointed out. "Lots of things." "Yes, but they evolved here," Drix said. "They adapted over millions of years. They belong here." Something in Hana's expression changed. Just for a moment a smile crossed her face. "Yes," she said quietly. "They do belong here." That night, as they sat around their fire, Boric asked the question that had been bothering him for days. Where did humans come from originally? The other cadets looked interested despite their exhaustion. It was a fair question. At the academy, everyone learned about everyone else's home worlds. The rocky planets where the stone people lived, the gas giants where beings like Xyla were born, the ocean worlds of the water breathers. But humans never talked much about their origin world. They said it was called Earth, but they were vague about details. Some humans lived on space stations. Others lived on colony worlds. When asked about their home planet, they usually changed the subject. Earth, Hana said simply. Yes, but where is Earth? Boric pressed. What is it like? Hana looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Xyla and Drix. Then she looked around at the jungle that had killed 8 of their companions. This is Earth, she said. The silence that followed was broken only by the sounds of the jungle at night. Insects chirping. Small animals moving through the trees. The distant call of a night bird. What? Zyla whispered. This is Earth, Hana repeated. This death world that you are trying to survive. This is where humans come from. Borik's rock face could not show emotion, but his voice showed his shock. That is impossible. Why? Because humans are weak, small, soft. How could you evolve on a world like this? Hana smiled again, and this time there was something predatory about it. Who told you we were weak? She stood up and walked to the edge of their firelight. With her bare hands, she broke a branch as thick as Drix's arm. She pointed to a tree where claw marks showed that something large had been sharpening its claws. That jaguar from a few days ago? It weighs about 60 kilograms. I weigh 55. But I made it back down because I was not afraid. She pointed to another tree where tooth marks showed where something had been feeding. Those are from a caiman, like a big lizard with teeth. They can crush bones. But they are ambush predators, so if you know what to look for, you can avoid them. She walked back to the fire and sat down. This jungle has things that can kill you in hundreds of ways. Poisonous plants, venomous snakes, disease-carrying insects, predators that hunt in packs, weather that can strip flesh from bone, bacteria that can eat you alive. The three alien cadets listened in growing horror. And this, Hana continued, is considered one of the nice parts of Earth. Nice parts? Drix's voice cracked. Oh yes, we have deserts where the air is hot enough to cook meat, mountains where the cold can freeze you solid in minutes, oceans with storms that can sink ships the size of space stations, forests where the trees themselves try to kill you, and those are just the natural dangers. She poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks up into the night sky. Then there are the other humans. Zyla's gas form became almost invisible. Other humans? 7 billion of them last time I checked. All living on this death world. All adapted to survive here. All competing for resources and territory and mates. Hana looked directly at each of them. Do you know what the most dangerous predator on Earth is? They shook their heads. Humans, she said simply. Borik was the first to understand. His voice came out as a whisper. That is why you are not afraid. I am not afraid because this is home, Hana said. I grew up here. I learned to swim in rivers that have things with teeth. I learned to climb trees to get away from things that wanted to eat me. I learned to find food and water and shelter in places where everything is trying to kill you. She stood up and looked around at the jungle that surrounded them. You call this a death world. I call it Tuesday in the Amazon. You think this is the most dangerous place in the galaxy. I think this is a nice place for a camping trip. The three alien cadets stared at her with new understanding. And with that understanding came a new kind of fear. Not fear of the jungle, but fear of the small, quiet human who had been keeping them alive. So when they say no cadet could survive Earth, Borik said slowly, what they really mean is... What they really mean, Hana said with a smile that showed her teeth, is that no alien cadet could survive Earth. But I am not alien. This is my home. She lay down on her sleeping mat and closed her eyes. Good night. Tomorrow we start the long walk to the pickup point. Try to keep up. On day 23, they reached the edge of the jungle. After more than 3 weeks of green hell, the sight of open space should have been a relief. But as they crested a small hill, what they saw below made the three alien cadets freeze in terror. Humans. Dozens of them. The settlement spread out in the valley below looked primitive but organized. Simple buildings made of wood and metal, gardens growing food plants, people moving around doing daily tasks, and surrounding the settlement a fence made of sharp stakes and wire. We are dead, Zyla whispered, her gas form flickering with panic. They will kill us on sight. Humans are territorial, Drix agreed, his softened shell making nervous clicking sounds. They will see us as invaders. Even Borik, who feared very little, seemed worried. Can we go around? Hana studied the settlement for a long moment. She could see the people moving below, going about their business. She could see children playing in the gardens. She could see smoke rising from cooking fires. No, she said finally. We need supplies, medicine, and the pickup point is on the other side of the valley. Then we will have to fight our way through, Borik said, checking his weapons. No, Hana said again. We will not fight. Then what? Zyla asked. How do we get past a settlement full of armed humans? Hana smiled. We ask nicely. Before any of them could stop her, she stood up and started walking down the hill toward the settlement. The others had no choice but to follow, certain they were walking to their deaths. They had not gone far when they heard shouts from below. Humans came running toward them carrying weapons that looked primitive but deadly, spears with metal points, bows with sharp arrows, knives that gleamed in the sunlight. The alien cadets stopped walking, ready to fight or run, but Hana kept moving forward, her hands empty and visible. "That is close enough," shouted one of the humans, a man with dark hair and sun-darkened skin. He held a spear pointed at Hana's chest. "What are you?" Hana answered in perfect Korean. "My name is Hana Kim. I am human like you. These are my companions from the Galactic Academy. We mean no harm." The spear carrier blinked in surprise. He answered in the same language. "You speak Korean." "I am Korean," Hana replied calmly. "Or partly Korean. My family came from Seoul originally." A woman stepped forward from the group. She had short black hair and intelligent eyes. She spoke in Japanese. "I am Yuki Tanaka. If you are human, what are you doing with them?" She pointed at the 3 aliens who stood frozen with fear. "It is a long story," Hana said, switching to Japanese easily. "We are taking part in a survival trial. 30 days on Earth. They did not know what Earth was when they volunteered. They did not know. The man with the spear, who Hana now realized was named Jin Park based on what the others called him, looked confused. How could they not know? Because to them this is a death world, Hana explained. The most dangerous planet in known space. They think nothing can survive here. Jin and Yuki looked at each other. Then they started laughing. "Death world," Yuki said between laughs. "This is the Amazon Research Station. We study plants here. It is one of the most peaceful postings you can get." "Research station?" Drix spoke for the first time, his voice full of confusion. Jin looked at the alien with the softened shell. "Of course. What did you think this was?" "Primitive human settlement," Boric said slowly. "Survivors clinging to life on hostile world." The humans laughed harder. "Primitive?" Jin pulled out a small device that projected a holographic map. "We have full satellite coverage, climate control systems, and medical facilities that can handle anything short of major surgery. The fence is to keep the jaguars out of the gardens, not to defend against armies." Yuki nodded. "This is actually considered a vacation posting. Beautiful scenery, interesting work, and no stress. My last assignment was on Europa. Now that was dangerous." "Europa?" Zyla asked weakly. "One of Jupiter's moons," Hana explained. "Ice mining operation. Radiation, cold, mechanical hazards. But that is a human colony world," Nex said. "Those are supposed to be safe." Jin shook his head. "Safe? Who told you that? Human colonies are some of the most dangerous places in the galaxy. We only colonize planets that other species cannot survive on." "Why?" Boric asked. "Because they are cheaper," Yuki said practically. "No competition for resources. No territorial disputes. No environmental regulations to worry about." She gestured around at the jungle. This is like a park compared to most human settlements. On Kepler 442b, the atmosphere is sulfuric acid. On Wolf 359c, the surface temperature reaches 200 degrees. On Proxima Centauri b, the radiation would kill most species in hours. "And humans live there?" Trix asked in horror. "Millions of them," Jin confirmed. "With full cities, farms, schools, everything. The Proxima colony just celebrated its 100th anniversary." Hana watched her alien companions process this information. She could see the exact moment when the truth hit them. Their faces, or the parts of their bodies that served as faces, showed shock, then understanding, then a fear deeper than anything the jungle had inspired. "How many worlds do humans live on?" Boric asked quietly. "About 3,000 last count," Yuki said, "though that number goes up every year." 3,000 death worlds, Zyla whispered. "We do not call them death worlds," Jin corrected. "We call them home." A young human child ran up to the group, chattering excitedly in Portuguese. Jin picked her up and answered in the same language. The child stared at the aliens with curious eyes, showing no fear at all. "She wants to know if the Rockman can juggle," Jin translated. "She has never seen a granite before." Boric stared at the child, who was looking at him like he was an interesting toy instead of a dangerous alien warrior. "She is not afraid?" "Why would she be afraid?" Yuki asked. "You are not dangerous. I could crush her with one hand." "So could I," Jin pointed out. "So could that tree branch. So could a dozen other things. Fear is not about what could hurt you. It is about what is likely to hurt you." He set the child down and she ran back to play with her friends. "Besides, Yuki added. On Earth, we teach children early how to judge real threats from imaginary ones. This little one has already learned to identify poisonous plants, avoid dangerous animals, and treat injuries. She will be more capable of surviving than most adult aliens. Even the children are adapted for survival, Nex said in amazement. Of course, Hana said. How else would they live? Jin looked at the group of tired, injured aliens and then at Hana, who looked like she had been taking a pleasant walk. You have been keeping them alive out there, have not you? He asked. They have been trying hard, Hana said diplomatically. I bet they have. Jin smiled. Well, you are welcome to stay the night. We have a medical facility that can help with injuries and fatigue. And Yuki makes excellent rice, that is very kind, Hana said. But we should reach the pickup point tomorrow. The pickup point? Yuki looked thoughtful. That would be the clearing about 10 kilometers north? Yes, that is funny. We saw your ship land there 23 days ago. We wondered what it was doing. Boric looked confused. You saw our ship land? Of course. We monitor all air traffic in the region. Safety protocol, Jin nodded. We have been tracking your progress through the jungle too. Heat signatures, movement patterns. We were starting to worry about you. You were watching us? Scylla asked. Watching out for you? Yuki corrected. If you had gotten into real trouble, we would have helped. But the trial rules, Drix started. The trial rules say no outside help unless you are dying, Hana said. They never said anything about being observed. Jin looked at the aliens with something like pity. You really thought you were abandoned in a wilderness, did not you? With no help, no backup, no safety net? Yes, Boric said simply. That would be cruel, Yuki said. Why would anyone do that? Hana could have answered, but she stayed quiet. Let them figure it out for themselves. It was Drix who understood first. Because they wanted us to fail. They wanted to prove that no cadet could survive Earth. But why? Nex asked. Boric's rock features shifted as understanding dawned. Because they are afraid of us, of what we might become if we learn to survive here. Jin and Yuki exchanged glances. Afraid of you? Jin asked. Why would anyone be afraid of you? The aliens looked at each other, then at Hana, then back at the humans who were casually living on what the galaxy considered the most dangerous planet in existence. Because, Zyla said in a very small voice, if we could learn to survive on Earth, we might become like humans. And for the first time since leaving the Academy, all three aliens understood why that possibility terrified the galaxy. Day 30 arrived with morning sunlight streaming through the trees at the pickup point. The clearing looked exactly the same as it had 4 weeks ago, but the 4 figures waiting there were completely different from the 12 who had been dropped off. Hana sat on a fallen log, looking relaxed and healthy. Her clothes were worn but clean, her equipment well maintained. She looked like someone returning from a successful camping trip. Beside her sat 3 aliens who had been changed forever by their experience. Boric's rock skin showed the wear of 4 weeks in the jungle, but his posture showed something new, respect. Sila's gas form was more solid than it had ever been, compressed by Earth's atmosphere into something approaching physical strength. Drix's shell had hardened again in the drier air of the clearing, but the clicking sounds he made were different now, more thoughtful, less nervous. They had spent the night at the research station, where Jin and Yuki had treated their injuries and fed them real food. More importantly, they had spent hours talking with humans who lived on Earth by choice, who raised families here, who called this dangerous world home. The conversation had been eye-opening in ways that no amount of survival training could match. At exactly noon, the transport ship Endeavour appeared in the sky. Captain Yara's voice crackled over the communicator as the ship landed. Survival team, report status. 4 survivors ready for pickup, Hana replied calmly. There was a pause. 4, confirm 4 survivors, confirmed. Cadets Kim, Boric, Zyla, and Drix. Another pause, longer this time. Stand by for extraction. The ship's door opened and Captain Yara stepped out, followed by 2 medical technicians. She stared at the 4 cadets in obvious shock. Her yellow desert-adapted skin showed stress patterns that meant she was having trouble believing what she was seeing. This is unexpected, she said finally. Why? Hana asked innocently. Because no one has ever survived 30 days on Earth before. No one. Well, Hana said, standing up and shouldering her pack. I guess that is not true anymore. The medical technicians rushed forward to examine the survivors, expecting to find evidence of severe trauma, malnutrition, disease, or injury. Instead, they found 3 aliens who were tired but healthy, and 1 human who looked like she had gained weight. "How is this possible?" Captain Yara asked. "Earth has killed every cadet we have ever sent here." "Maybe you were sending the wrong cadets," Boric said quietly. The trip back to Nexus Prime took 2 days. During the flight, the 3 alien survivors talked quietly among themselves while Hana read a book. Captain Yara and her crew kept staring at them like they were looking at ghosts. When they docked at the academy, word had already spread. Crowds of cadets and instructors waited at the landing bay. 4 weeks ago, 12 volunteers had left for Earth. Now 4 were returning alive. It was unprecedented. Admiral Vextar waited at the head of the crowd, his crystal form reflecting the lights of the docking bay. His forearms were crossed in a posture that meant he was dealing with something that did not fit his understanding of reality. The 4 survivors walked down the ship's ramp in single file. First Hana, moving with the easy confidence she had always shown. Then Boric, whose rock features were set in new determination. Then Xyla, whose gas form held a stability it had never possessed before. Finally Drix, whose shell clicked with rhythms that spoke of hard-won wisdom. The crowd was silent as they approached Admiral Vextar. 300 cadets from dozens of species watched the impossible sight of beings who had survived the galaxy's most dangerous world. "Cadet Kim," Admiral Vextar said, his voice echoing in the large bay. "Report. Mission completed successfully, sir," Hana replied. 4 cadets survived 30 days on Earth. That should not have been possible. And yet here we are, sir. Admiral Vextar's crystal face showed no emotion, but his body language indicated severe confusion. Earth has claimed the lives of every cadet we have sent there. The strongest, the most prepared, the most intelligent, all dead within days. Perhaps, sir, you were measuring the wrong qualities. Explain. Hana looked around at the crowd of watching cadets. She saw fear in their faces, fear of Earth, fear of death, fear of failure. But she also saw something else, curiosity. They wanted to know how she had done it, how she had survived where so many others had died. "Earth is not just dangerous because of its environment," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet bay. "It is dangerous because it is inhabited. We know Earth has native life form, not just life forms, sir. It is inhabited by humans, 7 billion of them, and humans do not just survive on Earth, they thrive there." Admiral Vexatar's crystal form seemed to dim. "Are you saying—" "I am saying that Earth is not an uninhabited death world where cadets are tested against nature. Earth is a thriving planet where humans live and work and raise families. It has cities with millions of people. It has farms that feed billions. It has schools and hospitals and research stations." She gestured to her 3 companions. "We spent our last night at a human research facility. The people there thought it was funny that we considered Earth dangerous. They told us it was one of their easier assignments. The silence in the bay was absolute. 300 cadets and dozens of instructors tried to process what they were hearing. Furthermore," Hana continued, "Earth is not the most dangerous world humans live on. It is one of the easier ones. Humans colonize planets that other species cannot even visit. They call death worlds home." Instructor Kale stepped forward from the crowd. His bird-like features showed the kind of sharp intelligence that had made him a good teacher. "If what you say is true," he said carefully, "then the trial was never about survival skills." "No, sir. It was not. It was about discovering what humans really are." "Yes, sir." Admiral Vextar's forearms uncrossed slowly. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than usual. "The trial parameters clearly stated that no cadet could survive Earth. The record supports this conclusion." Hana looked directly at the Admiral. Around her, she could feel the attention of every being in the bay. This was the moment everything had been building toward. She raised her hand, a simple human gesture that somehow commanded absolute attention. "Then how am I still standing?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Admiral Vextar stared at the small human who had just shattered every assumption the Academy had about Earth. About survival, about what was possible. "Moreover," Hana continued, her voice steady and confident, "I should point out that Earth is considered one of our more hospitable worlds. If the Academy would like a real challenge for next year's cadets, I could recommend some of our actual military training planets." The silence that followed was deafening. Somewhere in the crowd, a cadet made a small sound of distress. Someone else muttered a prayer in their native language. Boric stepped forward to stand beside Hana. "Sir, I would like to formally request transfer to the Human Military Exchange Program." Sila moved to join them. "As would I, sir." Drix clicked his shell in agreement. "And I, sir." Admiral Vextar looked at the line forming behind the human cadet. Other aliens were stepping forward, first a few, then dozens. Cadets who had spent years learning to fight in the safe environment of space stations were asking to learn from the species that called Death Worlds home. "Why?" the Admiral asked. Boric answered for all of them. "Because if we are going to serve in the galaxy, we need to understand what real strength looks like." He looked at Hana with something approaching reverence. "And real strength is not just surviving in impossible conditions. Real strength is making impossible conditions look routine." Hana smiled, showing her teeth in the way that predators did when they were pleased. "Welcome to the human experience," she said. "Try to keep up." As the crowd of cadets surrounded the survivors, asking questions and requesting stories, Admiral Vextar stood alone with his thoughts. The trial had been designed to prove that Earth was unconquerable, that some challenges were simply too great for any cadet to overcome. Instead, it had proven something far more unsettling, that humanity had not been trying to prove they belonged in the galaxy. The galaxy had been trying to prove it could coexist with humanity. And judging by the line of aliens requesting human military training, the galaxy had just realized which species was really in charge. Instructor Kale approached the Admiral, his sharp eyes bright with understanding. "Sir," he said quietly, "I believe we may need to reconsider our entire curriculum." Admiral Vextar watched Hana Kim calmly answering questions from dozens of eager cadets, explaining Earth's dangers like they were minor inconveniences. "Yes," he said finally. "I believe we do."